So the poll says people want more BTS, but then Alexis came in at number 2, so I'm thinking they want BTS of Alexis. Coming to you pre-tape from the Best Go Show studios, this is the Best Go Show. I'm your host, Albert Aguilera. That's my producer, Curtis Stage. Curtis, today's our 50th episode.
That's surprising because we didn't think we would get past 5.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd get to 5.
No, but we're here. We're at 50, and this is an exciting one. We are going to be talking the LA Kings today. We are in the middle of summer and free agency's happening. We have no more Luch, which Albert is really pissed about, and we'll talk more about that. So, we have to talk about some free agent signings that just occurred. We have a new area on our show, new thing on our show, listener mail. We've decided that listeners are important. And their mail is important.
Some are important.
We're just having a few. And then we have a debate. We have a little debate that we're going to throw. And also we have a guest today, Kings fans. We have John Rosen today, and we're going to throw a great debate towards John. Let's see if he can answer all this debate for us.
Let's hope so. All right, guys, it's the middle of summer. We got nothing to do. We're talking about the Kings. We're talking about the free agency, and joining us live, but pre-tape for you guys at home via the magic of the Skype, is the LA Kings insider, John Rosen, everybody. Yay! John, thank you very much for spending your Wednesday morning with us. What is going on right now in the summertime?
Me personally, or in the hockey world? Me, I got nothing. It's quiet in the Rosen household. No. In the hockey world, this is a Kings team right now that still, I think that when you look at what the final product of what the roster will look like, by the trading deadline, 9 months from now, 8 months from now, you're going to see a slightly different team. I think there are still holes, even though the Kings did, an adequate job of patching up some of the holes where they needed depth options up during free agency. But you're still looking at a team that I think there's still question marks of who's going to play alongside Kopitar. A question mark of who's going to play on that right side second defensive pairing, though Alec Martinez is a viable option there. And I think that they have done a good job of shoring up and re-establishing their goaltending pipeline and having plenty of options at their disposal in the bottom 6 forwards as well as in that bottom defensive pairing. But, in regards to Lucic, we'll talk about Luch in just a little bit. It would have been beneficial for the Kings to sign them at the appropriate price, because then that would have allowed them to perhaps free up a younger forward to be able to exchange for a defenseman that can come in and make an impact. I think there's still the opportunity to do that. I don't know if that's going to be a summertime trade. I don't have the wherewithal right now to be able to say if that's something that's going to happen in training camp at the beginning of the season. At the trading deadline, but it's still a priority to continue to reinforce this defensive core. The Kings play with the excellent structure. They're a dynamite possession team and have been under the last couple years of Terry Murray and throughout all of Daryl Sutter's tenure. So even though their defensive core isn't as airtight as it had been during their Stanley Cup runs, this is still a team that limits shots against, plays with the puck in the offensive zone, and plays with that very strong structured play, that this should still be a team that, even though they have taken some hits personnel-wise, will still be able to win those 2-1 games and lower scoring type games. So it's going to be interesting, but right now, as for the Kings, it's still a work in progress, and I still see some holes that could be patched up over time.
All right, and that hole, like you mentioned, is on the left side, on the left wing with Milan Lucic. He abandoned us. He went up to Edmonton. He said, I'm coming up here because I want to play with Connor McDavid. I think that's a load of shit. You went up there because they offered you more money.
I think that it's always a combination of things. It's never one thing. There's never any whether you're talking about sports or justification for any reasoning, it's never just one sole thing that influences somebody to make that decision. For Milan Lucic, I mean, he's also thinking about his family as well. This is somebody that was offered $42 million. He wasn't offered that much money over an additional year with the Los Angeles Kings, as Pierre LeBrun reported. So it's a combination of the security, the safety, having the full 7 years that he got there with the type of the money that he got, but also the ability to play with Connor McDavid. And he's the absolute number one player that people are going to want to play with over the next however many years, as long as he remains healthy. Edmonton is going to be a team on the up and up. We say this I shouldn't say we say this every year, but it has been pretty evident that this is a team that has climbed out from the bottom of the cellar of the Pacific Division and the NHL. And I look at this roster right now. It's a dynamic collection of forwards The defense is improving, not quite there yet. Maybe some questions about goaltending, though I know Cam Talbot is still very highly regarded. I look at this Edmonton team as a team that will take a step forward this year. Milan Lucic has that presence. He is somebody that has won before. One of the issues with Edmonton in previous years is that has been a team that did not know how to win. That they had a group of very dynamic but very young forwards that all they had known coming up was losing. And over time, not that the players are going to admit this, eventually losing just becomes kind of a cultural thing. I think Milan Lucic is a type of player that can avoid going in that direction. I think he's going to be a very good fit for this Edmonton team. And again, those who would question the direction of the Edmonton Oilers, and of course they didn't get all that they probably should have gotten in trading Taylor Hall. I didn't like that move. That's still going to be a very good team going forward. They'll open up the new building this year, and it's going to be exciting to see what Connor McDavid can continue to do now that he's entering his sophomore season.
And they're still going to miss the playoffs. Edmonton will not.
Well,
make
this
the
year
playoffs.
they probably will.
No,
but what John's saying is,
I hope Milan never makes the playoffs ever again.
well, you have the same barber as me.
Well, that's the funny thing. Milan and I share the same barber. And my barber is a guy from Boston who was a big Milan Lucic fan and was okay when Milan got traded to Los Angeles because he understood it was a trade.
Yeah.
He understood that now that he lives in Los Angeles, he'd get to see Milan up close, but he is now as upset as I am because he's like, well, fuck this guy. Are you going to go up to Edmonton? What the fuck's there doing in Edmonton?
But people from Boston hate everybody.
No, people from Philly hate everybody. People from Philly are happier seeing you miserable than they are happy when their own team wins.
Got it.
That's true.
So I miss seeing, because I live in the Valley now, I very rarely see any players out in like the wild in their natural habitat. I don't live in, I don't spend a ton of time in the South Bay, in Hermosa Beach and Manhattan Beach down there. But it does remind me of like back when the players actually did live in the Valley. This was kind of in the end of the Gretzky years, maybe the middle of the Gretzky years. And when the team used to practice at Isoplex, there were players, Luc Robitaille lived in Sherman Oaks. Steve Duchesne lived down the street from us in Encino when I was growing up. Dave Taylor, Wayne Gretzky were also kind of on that Encino-Tarzana border. And as much as I do love the 818 don't hate, it is still probably all for the better that these guys are living in the South Bay. There's a little bit more to do, and it does seem like it's a good small town atmosphere, and they really have latched on to that kind of beach lifestyle.
Well, it's pretty cool because a lot of them live, like, Kopitar's got 2 homes right next to each other, and he lives across the street from Gabrick. Like, these guys own the entire neighborhoods that they live on.
That's big. That's something that, coming up in junior hockey, you always wanted to have your billet families. Billet families are the families that house and care for young junior hockey players before they go to the professionals. You always wanted to have them clustered around a very small radius. You all wanted them to be together. You didn't want them far flung, just because it helps in camaraderie. It helps in team building when they see each other, not just at the rink, but every single night. They're basically playing Call of Duty when they're not at the rink and hanging out. But that's always a good thing, and that's something that certainly has helped this Kings team in winning 2 championships. When you look back, especially back in 2014, there was a comment, I believe it came from San Jose, where the Los Angeles Kings, they all seemed like they were friends. That comes from that living together and being together and living in that in their South Bay communities.
Well, I just think it's kind of weird. If you're a millionaire athlete, why would you have roommates? You had Jones, Toffoli, and Pearson all living together. Like, you have these 3 millionaires sharing a house like a bunch of broke college kids.
It's actually now it's in the CBA that when the players travel on the road, if you're not on an entry-level contract, you now don't have a roommate. It's been this way since the 12-13 season, but previously, players had roommates on the road. They don't have them anymore, again, unless they have that, they're still on that entry-level contract. So you heard talk about Dustin Brown before, got to know Drew Doughty very well, being roommates together on the road. It doesn't quite work out that well, but it was good to talk at the NHL Awards with Brian McClellan, the GM of the Washington Capitals. He was Jim Fox's roommate on the road back when he was traveling with the Kings in the early 1980s. He's a former King, of course.
Oh, awesome.
So should we do some listener mail, Albert?
Yeah, let's do listener mail.
Let's do some of these because I think that John can answer some of these. So Eric Roberts asks, the Kings need to free up money, and the easiest way to do that is to trade away a contract. What's the probability someone like King is moved before opening night? Can you speculate on that at all, or any insight?
I can give you a report, which is in conversations previously with hockey operations, where the Kings going to come to terms with Milan Lucic, that again would have provided that flexibility to perhaps move forward. You look at Dwight King, he's somebody that is an unrestricted free agent after this coming year. The Kings are a cap strap team. They're going to have to pay Tyler Toffoli and Tanner Pearson coming up, and they should have enough money. They have over $14 million of cap space going into next year. There shouldn't be any issues with that. But he would be one of those younger wingers that could be exchanged for a forward. I don't want to speculate on that right now just because I haven't heard his name come up at all, but just because he is a UFA, he could be aligned with that category. Yeah. I wouldn't expect to see the names of guys like Tyler Toffoli, Tanner Pearson move. When you talk about, with hockey operations, the players that had the positive seasons last year, Toffoli, Pearson, obviously towards the top of that list. And given that the Kings basically swapped out Milan Lucic, replacing it with Teddy Purcell, who's less of a first-line guy, more of a top 6, top 9 guy, the Kings offense will probably take a little bit of a hit. So if they want to make a trade for a young defenseman, I wouldn't expect to see them moving a player that is going to be somebody that they're going to be relying on for some offense this coming year.
Exactly.
But again, I haven't heard Dwight King's name come up specifically, but just keep in mind that he is a UFA after this coming season, and oftentimes UFAs can be moved, if there is foreseen ahead of time that there could be any challenges in a contract, or if they're going to be priced out of the salary structure or anything like that. But again, the Kings have very, very rarely in the past, during this window of opportunity, moved players out of the room and moved established players out of the room.
Yeah.
Look at the guys that have left. Of course, there was Jack Johnson, who was a pretty integral part of that previous Kings team in 11-12, but that was also to bring in Jeff Carter. Matt Fratton, somebody that had been moved, and then you look at goaltenders that just, again, became too expensive for the Kings and what they were looking to do in the structure. Jonathan Bernier, Martin Jones acquired as part of trades. But it is part of kind of a core principle of this team that they are adverse to moving players who are established players inside that room. That being said, too, the Kings have diminishing assets. It's part of the whole cycle of competitiveness in the NHL that after a while, once you are at the peak of your competitive cycle, you might not have as many draft picks, as many top-flight prospects, because those have been exchanged for players that may or may not have helped you win hockey games too. So at this point right now, we'll see if that that philosophy evolves. But the Kings generally averse to trading players out of their room, and generally in the past have preferred to use draft picks and prospects coming up. But that could change, given that they're looking again to rebuild their pipeline.
Well, good. That leads us to another question. So Selena Castillo, I think our biggest LA Kings fan for the Best Co Show right now.
She cut up John, I don't know if you saw this, but on last week's episode, I guess she went out and cut up portions of me being a total dick and just lined them up.
Which isn't hard.
Well, I thought it was pretty funny.
Hard.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah, it was good. So she's become one of our editors now, I guess. So she asks, and this leads us to our free agents, out of all the UFAs the Kings signed, who will make the biggest impact?
I would go with Teddy Purcell right now. I think it's, of the guys that they've signed, they're more depth guys right now. They needed to go out and really reestablish their goaltending pipeline. Mm-hmm. They did so by signing Zatkoff and bringing in Jack Campbell via trade as well. They needed to get some defensive depth, some more right shooters. They acquired Zach Trotman and Tom Gilbert. Both of those players, though, are more like third pairing type players right now. So there's still a little bit of a hole again on that second pair right D. Michael Latta should be somebody that Kings fans are going to enjoy watching. He's somebody that has an identity as a player, plays hard, he fights, he protects his teammates. He's more of a fourth-line center. He's a very responsible type player, somebody that should fit in with the Kings systems as well. Hasn't been a scorer in his career, though. Mm-hmm. And as much as he was liked in Washington, Barry Trotz had made comments that as good of a guy as he is in the room, as much of an identity as he has, and as hard as the minutes that he plays, I'm paraphrasing, of course, you've got to be able to provide a little bit more versatility in what you can bring. And he referenced penalty killing. We'll see if he's a part of the penalty killing as well. Jeff Zatkoff, somebody that will spell Jonathan Quick for those 15, 16, 17 nights a year. But looking at the UFAs right now, Teddy Purcell has the potential to perhaps play some time with Andrzej Kopitar. Likely probably end up seeing him in more of a complementary forward type role. But again, this Kings team, Marian Gaborik had a rough season last year. We're going to see if he can remain alongside Andrzej Kopitar. So it's going to be interesting as this Kings team, again, looks to try and cultivate that offense that you will take a tiny bit of a hit with the departure of Milan Lucic.
Nice. And our last question, this is our last one. This one is not a hockey question, I think. Can you speculate on the current relationship between Taylor Swift, who we're fans of on the show?
I'm a huge fan of Taylor Swift.
Albert really likes him. And Tom Hiddleston, who I think's a linebacker for the Rams? No, he's an actor.
He's Loki.
He's Loki.
He plays Loki in the Avengers movies.
How long do you see this relationship lasting, John? This is our last question.
Side question, and do you think I have a shot when she's done with him?
What's that?
Do you think that when she's done with him, I have a shot? I can take her to Kings games.
And they're going to remain together for 13 months.
13
months? That's a good one.
I like
hardly
that.
know who he is, and I'm sorry I don't listen to Taylor Swift. I don't know. I don't know, but she goes through boyfriend, from what I understand, pretty quickly. I mean, I'm the last person to be qualified to talk about Taylor, but I don't know.
That's why hey, we have to. It's our listener mail.
It's our listener mail. All right, well, let's get back to hockey.
Okay, all right.
All right, so, John, how much of what the Kings are doing now, and really what other teams around the league are doing right now, do you think are part of this expansion draft that's coming in? Because there are going to be players that you can't protect, and you got to kind of look into that.
It's huge. Every single team is jockeying to be able to kind of have, at least, if not going into the year, during the year, to really have that group protected. And the Kings needed to sign a goaltender to 2 years. To be able to have the minimal requirements, to be able to keep Jonathan Quick and not have to expose him in the expansion draft. So that's what they did when they signed Jeff Zatkoff to a 2-year deal as well. As it stands right now, I mean, you look at whether the Kings are going to keep the 8 players in the goalie or the 7 forwards, 3 defensemen in a goalie. If they go the 7 forwards, 3 defensemen in a goalie, Braden McNabb, as of right now, you would imagine that the Kings are protecting Drew Doughty, Jake Muzzin, and Alec Martinez. So those are going to be some questions that we're going to have to continue asking over the course of the year. Does Braden McNabb unseat a player that you would probably already think is under contract for next year, who would be protected in that expansion draft? I don't think the Kings' challenges right now are going to be as severe as several other teams' challenges. You look at Anaheim, they have to protect Kevin Bieksa, and he had a so-so year this year. I mean, if you're Bob Murray, who are you going to not protect over a group of, him? Hampus Lindholm obviously is getting protected once he has that new deal. Sami Vatanen is getting protected. But this could be a big influence in why Cam Fowler, might be moved prior to the start of the season, or moved once the season does start. It's because all teams right now have that expansion draft in mind. Keep in mind that the Las Vegas team can only select at most one player. They have to select one player from each NHL team. So at this point right now, I know a lot of Kings fans are concerned about Dustin Brown's contract with the diminishing returns that he has provided, over the last 3 seasons or so. Dustin Brown is somebody that you would imagine will not be protected in this expansion draft. But if right now we're talking about his contract being untradeable, what if he is not claimed by 29 other teams via trade? Why would that 30th team want to take him through 2022 at $5.875 million per year? So it's a big year coming up for Dustin Brown as well. I think the team is doing whatever it can to kind of put him in that position, take some of the pressure off of him, let him go out there and focus on hockey. I'm not sure if that's something that is going to make any profound change in the production that he's able to provide, but still should be able to maybe raise some of those margins just a little bit. And increase some of his production, because his possession metrics have remained very strong. His secondary metrics are generally pretty strong. He's just taken shots a little bit farther away from the net, and he's not getting towards the front of the net with the puck as much as he used to do in his career. So I think those are things that they're going to be looking for to continue to reinforce with him this coming season. But again, he's somebody that will factor into the decisions of the team's protection list once you get towards that expansion draft next June.
Yeah, I mean, with Dustin Brown and someone like Marian Gaborik, who have these bloated contracts, I'm under the impression that the Las Vegas team might take something like this only because they have to spend a minimum of $48 million in the expansion draft, and after that, they still have to hit the cap floor.
There will also be other expensive players. They shouldn't have a problem getting to the cap floor. Every year, there are teams that enter free agency well below the floor, and they'll be able to bring in contracts. You saw Arizona take on Pavel Datsyuk, his contract. Florida has been spending money, paying hand over fist to get guys and free agents to come into Florida during their competitive window. Carolina is still going to have to bring in some more guys as well, but there will be other players who are going to have contracts that aren't going to be as difficult to move as Dustin Brown's right now that will be available in the expansion draft. So it's going to be interesting to see. But as of this point, if you're expecting Dustin Brown just to get claimed by Las Vegas, well, I don't think that's something that in any certainty will happen. And again, let's revisit this after this coming season. It's going to be an interesting year coming up for Dustin Brown and how he looks to go back and reestablish his game as an NHL power forward.
Yeah, especially now that he's no longer the captain on the team. So we'll see how he does that. But, okay, so we just drafted. We had no first-round draft picks. I don't even know if we have first-round draft picks over the next 5 years. Dean likes to trade away his draft picks. But, okay, we drafted in the second round. I think it was 52nd overall. We took a defenseman. And according to things that I've read online, this guy has the highest hockey IQ of any defenseman in the draft, according to our scouts, is why they took him.
That would be Jacob Muvarare, who was taken in the 4th round, and he's somebody that they're going to have to work with on his skating because they looked at all the players, the way that he understands the game, his awareness on the ice is like a lottery pick type player. He just is having trouble with his skating. He's going to play for Sweden at that summer development camp, the World Junior Development Camp. Used to take place in Lake Placid, will now take place in Plymouth, Michigan. He'll be there for that tournament as well for Sweden. He'll be the youngest player as of right now, as it stands on Sweden's roster. But the Kings' top pick, the second rounder, was Cale Clegg. This was a player who was projected as a late first round, early second round type pick. He was one of those guys that fell just a little bit. He's shorter, but he is an excellent puck mover, and he had a very, very defined role as a young player on a veteran-heavy team that ultimately won the WHL championship in the Brandon Wheat Kings. So, as a 17-year-old, already as a championship, played in the Memorial Cup, and again, had a very chiseled-out role, which is not easy always, even as a top draft pick, when you're playing on such a veteran team. He's going to have slightly more opportunities this year. Again, a player who can get the puck up ice quickly into the hands of the forwards. He's skilled and creative that can also create on his own. And he's also somebody that, because of his skating and because of his awareness in all zones, should still be able to lean on guys. I wouldn't say play a heavy style of game, but can still separate body from puck, play physical, and do everything that has to be done in his own zone. So it's interesting. And people have been making this joke because his name is Cale. You see, I wouldn't say a lot of younger Canadian hockey players named Cale, but they usually spell it with a C. If you remember someone like Cale Hulse, but Cale, he spells it with a K. Cale Clegg, it almost sounds as if he's from House Lannister on Game of Thrones. It sounds like Sandor Clegane or something like that. But spoke with him again yesterday after meeting him at the draft. A good kid. Have heard nothing but good things too from his representation as well. So should be an interesting player and a good, the type of player that the Kings need coming up through their system. Skilled, creative, elite skating puck mover who can help out a power play.
Nice. We think he's going to fit in well just because his name is Cale, spelled with a K, and that will fit in well in Los Angeles. We talked about that last time.
It's a power food.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah.
But I don't expect to see him play for us for 3, maybe 4 years.
Really,
so,
that far off?
I mean,
John, do you see 3 or 4 years
Drew
down the
Dowd
road?
Oh yeah, he's 3-4 years away.
Because he's still too small.
He turned 18 in his draft year, or I believe he's already 18. Beg your pardon, don't have his birth date right on me right now. But still, this is a player, defenseman, and the Kings are going to want to after junior hockey to make sure he gets time in the American Hockey League as well and develops there too. So there's a player still down the road that could help and impact this Kings team.
Yeah, it's like we talked last week where the MLB draft and the NHL draft, they don't really mean anything to me because I don't watch WHL. I don't watch the European leagues. I have no idea who the fuck these kids are. I don't watch high school baseball. And chances are you're not going to see them play for 3 or 4 years. It's not like the NBA or the NFL draft where you watch college basketball, college football, and these kids are expected to immediately impact your franchise.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. But speaking of the kids, and we talked last week, which this kind of set off a little storm on LA Kings Twitter with the ladies on the internet. I had made the remark that Jeff Carter was very handsome.
Yes.
But that Adrian Kempe, being the Jeff Carter type, was younger, has the same skill set, but might be more handsomer. John, you spend a lot of time with the players. What is your take on this? Because we're going to create a bracket because it's the middle of summer, and as you can tell, we have way too much time on our hands.
Their handsome quotient has taken a little bit of a hit in the last couple of years. The dimples and cleft chins per 60 decreased when Jarrett Stoll and Justin Williams had left the team as well. They're hockey players. They're fit. They're generally well put together people. The Kings should still be a pretty good looking team, though. I haven't really paid a ton of attention right now to who's coming, who's gone, and their looks. But they're no more Jared Stoll, no more Williams. You're going to take a little bit of a hit in that category. Thankfully, Jeff Carter can still keep the team afloat.
Even though he's missing teeth, he still looks really handsome.
You
in the
really
suit.
have a thing.
I'm willing to bet we are the most handsome team in the Pacific Division.
Really?
We
And
need
we
to
have
bring
the
in
best
the
looking
Royal
ice girls,
Half for
too.
this. The Royal Half probably has like power rankings week to week of who the most handsome team is. And I apologize to the Royal Half too if that is actually something that they've already done. And I'm stealing.
Have they done that? I don't know. We should contact them and ask.
They use that picture of Jeff Carter in the suit all the time.
That's a great picture.
Yeah, it's a good picture. I wish I could look that good in a suit.
Fuck.
Nice. So, Albert, what is our gift of the day?
All right, guys, our gift of the day. You're going to remember this is from the Vancouver series in 2012 when Dustin Brown destroyed Henrik Sedin. And this is really how a lot of us are always going to remember Dustin Brown prior to his production tailing
falling off.
Because this kind of was the catalyst that got us to wreck Vancouver, and then we just steamrolled through the 2012 playoffs, and he was our first captain ever to lift the cup. He lifted the second cup, and he's no longer the captain, but this is how I'd like to remember Dustin Brown.
I'm hoping that he comes back this year, like John said.
No, he's going to come back with a fucking chip on his shoulder.
He is.
Look, I'm the only blogger on the internet that fucking actively defends him for his intangibles.
I love Dustin.
I understand that he's overpaid for the lack of offensive production, but he just fucking wrecks guys, and you cannot put a price on leadership.
You're getting fired up.
I'm getting fired up, okay?
Dustin, if you're watching, Albert is fired up for this season coming up for you.
It's what month are we in? We're in fucking July. It's got to be October already.
Already fired up.
Jesus.
All right.
All right, guys, but that's been our show. We'd like to thank again John Rosen for coming on and wasting your Wednesday morning with us. John, thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You guys can stalk him on Twitter at LA Kings Insider. Find his articles on the internet, lakingsinsider.com. You can find us on, iTunes, podcast. Look at the behind the scenes on the Instagram. And is that it?
I think that's it. Twitter,
I think
of course.
that's it. We're going to try to
Twitter.
figure out if we can make a bracket for the ladies. But stalk us on Twitter at Besco Show. That's been our show. And you guys have a good night.